Thousands of public utility vehicle drivers will begin to receive their fuel subsidy from the government on March 15th to help cope with soaring fuel prices. But some doubt the cash aid will reach them. More from Amor Santos.
These jeepney drivers are waiting with bated breath for the fuel subsidy from the government. They say their take-home has been cut in half by the rising fuel costs. With 200 pesos left after a day's work, they hold on to the Pantawid Pasada cards.
Yung card ng Tawid Pasada, intak na sa amin. Kaya so, hindi naman kakalaman yun kung hindi lalagyan ng LTFRB. Ilang araw lang yun kung ilalagay namin sa diesel. Pero kahit pa paano, malaking tulong na rin sa amin.
According to the LTFRB, the 6,500 peso fuel subsidy is now on its way to drivers' Pantawid Pasada cards.
156,000 na PUJ. Kasi sila yung meron ng cards. We will call out all the rest of the operators to process their cards naman po.
LTFRB says there are more than 377,000 target beneficiaries for now, but this can still go up. They include drivers of public utility vehicles, taxis, tricycles, and ride-hailing apps or delivery services. But tricycle drivers and riders may receive less.
Looking at the modes, mas malaki naman talaga ang crudo na gagastusin sa bus, sa PUJ, sa yung mga higher modes compared sa tricycles at sa motorcycles po sa mga deliveries.
But Arnolfo Corres is doubtful. He says UV Express drivers like him also took a hit when the pandemic struck, with no help in sight.
UV Express po talaga na pag-iwanan. Kung ano po ang jeep, ganun din po kami. Naghahatid naman po kami ng mga pasahero. Kung sa ano, lahat ng legality na binibigay ng inaatang sa amin ng LTFRB, ginagawa po namin.
The train law provided fuel vouchers only for franchise holders of public utility jeepneys. The 2022 General Appropriations Act expanded the program. There's not much satisfaction from jeepney drivers too. While some welcome the fuel subsidy, others prefer to continue fighting for a fare increase or even stage a transport strike.
Pumunta kami doon ng LTFRB, madaming requirements, mahirap kunin yung mahirap kumuha. Tsatsaga lang po kami. Pero pagka tumaas pa po yung crudo, hindi na po kami para bumiyahe po.
Siyempre, hindi naman namin pwedeng hihinto ang biyahe. Paano naman yung ating mga commuter, yung mga mananakay? Wala. Kaya anong nangyayari sa amin, bawi-bawi lang.
Amor Santos, CNN Philippines.
The Agriculture Department is also set to release the fuel subsidy for farmers and fisherfolk any day now. But will the 3,000 peso aid be enough to shoulder the higher cost of production and transportation? Stanley Gaheta has that story.
64-year-old farmer Apolinario de Armas felt a sigh of relief when he learned about the 3,000 peso fuel discount voucher from the Department of Agriculture amid the rising fuel costs. He uses 10 liters of diesel to power the plow in a 2,000 square meter farmland.
Makakatulong din yun. Siyempre, wala kaming hanap buhay na yun ang inaasahan namin. Ang inaanin namin sa bukid ay hindi sapat.
We get the same reaction from 24-year-old fisherman Carmelo Aguas, who needs 2 liters of diesel to operate his motorized fishing boat.
Malaking bagay na po yun para sa aming mga trabador, mga ingisda. Makakatipid kami sa kakarga ng diesel. Medyo makadagdagan yung kita namin. Ganun.
Special Provision number 20 of the 2022 General Appropriations Act provide for a 500 million peso fuel subsidy program that will benefit Filipino farmers and fisherfolk nationwide.
According to the Agriculture Department, the discount will help reduce production and transport costs of major agricultural products. Regional field units will issue the fuel vouchers to qualified beneficiaries. Authorities have a list of rice farmers, including those who own farming machines, either individually or through a farmers association or cooperatives. The Fishery Bureau likewise has names of fisherfolk owning small to medium-sized motorboats across the country. About 150,000 farmers and fisherfolk will benefit from the subsidy.
We're about to receive yung kopya ng SARO galing sa DBM at nakikipag-ugnayan nga kami sa DBP para doon sa card issuance. So in the next few days ay masisimulan natin yung release.
But fisherfolk organization Pamalakaya believes a production subsidy worth 15,000 pesos is far better than a one-time fuel discount.
Nabugbog na kami doon sa pagtaas ng presyo ng gasolina. Kaya kulang to kulang. Yung 15,000 pwede pa rin namin magamit pagbili ng mga gamit ng pangisda.
The Agriculture Department assures there will be more subsidy programs amid fuel price hikes. Another tranche is expected in the next quarter.
Ito lang yung unang tranche at ina-expect natin na by month of April, in-approve naman ng Economic Development Cluster na magkaroon ng additional na pondo about 600 million pesos on top of the 500 million na nakapaloob sa General Appropriations ngayong taon.
Stanley Gate, CNN Philippines.
The Budget Department defends the economic team's decision to retain the excise tax on oil. Budget spokesperson Rolando Toledo says lowering the tax will only lead to revenue losses. Economic managers believe the grant of subsidy to the transport sector is enough for now. Higher fuel excise taxes were imposed under the tax reform or train law.
To be more specific po, the measures that will have to be significantly have a negative impact po dito sa ating revenue generation with projected loss of around 117 billion in revenues or around 0.5% of GDP. And eventually, if we maintain our disbursement program, it will result to a bigger deficit. Hence, the DDBCC po ay recommending that provided yung tinatawag nating targeted relief assistance instead through a social protection program.
Labor groups are bent on getting a pay hike amid soaring prices of oil and basic goods. An employers group, however, tells workers to manage their expectations. The full story from our senior correspondent, David Santos.
Members of a coalition of labor unions marching in Manila on Friday to demand increases in salaries. The last time the government implemented a new wage order was in November 2018, approving a 25 peso pay hike in NCR and setting the minimum wage at 537 pesos. In November 2019, months before the pandemic struck, there was a petition to raise it to 750.
Kasi that time, ginagamit nila yung pandemic para hindi magdagdag ng sahod ng mga manggagawa.
But with the soaring oil prices being worsened by the Russia-Ukraine conflict and its domino effect on basic goods, labor groups insist it is only fair and logical to revive the 750 minimum wage appeal.
Medyo affected yung buying capacity ng ating mga workers. So, inactivate ko agad yung ating wage board.
Kailangan yung minimum na sahod, maabot niya yung decent living standards, mabigay niya yung katumbas ng labor productivity ng mga manggagawa, at higit sa lahat, maibsan yung mga nararanasan ng mamamayan.
But the employers group ECOP is citing a litany of reasons why raising wages now is not a good idea. First, it will only lead to wider pay gaps, since majority of workers belong to the informal sector and do not earn minimum wage. Second, how about the underemployed, who will grant them pay increases? And third, about 90% of the nation's businesses belong to the micro, small, and medium enterprises, many of which are still trying to recover from the pandemic.
I'm not saying we are not to increases. It is up to the wage board to do that. I'm just warning people not to create expectation.
The Trade Union Congress of the Philippines is also set to submit a separate petition to the wage board next week. The Partido Manggagawa, on the other hand, is asking Congress to pass what it calls a long overdue 100 peso legislated wage hike. A labor leader running for the Senate has an appeal to incumbent officials.
Hinahamon natin yung mga nakalukluk pa sa kasalukuyan. Sa Hunyo pa ho magtatapos ang yung tungkulin at responsibilidad, accountability sa ating mga manggagawa at mamamayan na umaksyon naman kayo.
David Santos, CNN Philippines.
It is day 2 of yet another massive rollout meant to immunize Filipinos against COVID-19. Unlike the previous rounds, more satellite vaccination sites have been set up this time as fewer people come to get their shots in major inoculation hubs. Caroline Bonkin has the details.
About 15,000 devotees visit Quiapo Church on Fridays. It's a melting pot of people from different places, and health workers are taking advantage of this to increase vaccine coverage. On one side of the church grounds, there's a satellite COVID-19 vaccination site offering primary doses for those aged 12 and older and booster shots for adults. The vaccination drive here in Quiapo Church will be held every Friday. Most of the churchgoers and vendors who got vaccinated said they hardly have time to visit a vaccination site.
Magandang pagkakataon ngayon, kaya sinamantala na namin. Malaking tulong kasi hindi na kayo mahihirapan Pagkatapos namin magpapakunan, andyan ang pagtitinda namin.
Yung time na hindi ako makapag-booster sa Valenzuela, it is because busy ako sa trabaho, nakuha ko rito. Sabay yung pagsaserve ko, nakapag-booster ako.
Ilalapit na po natin yung mga bakuna sa kanila para hindi naman po kumain ng malaking oras sa kanila.
Though Metro Manila already reached the target vaccine coverage, 126,000 senior citizens and over 1.5 million adolescents and children remain unvaccinated, while over 5 million adults here are due for booster. Vaccinations also continue in cinemas and made available in workplaces like call center companies. Health workers from the Philippine National Police and the Armed Forces of the Philippines serve as vaccinators. Clinics are also offering COVID-19 vaccines for free. A day ahead of the National Vaccination Day, health workers in Barangay Horseshoe, Quezon City did house-to-house vaccination. But this plan didn't push through in other provinces.
Because meron tayong low pressure area sa other regions, nakita natin na may mga lugar na binabaha at may mga lugar na umuulan.
Galvez says it's too early to talk about alert level 0. Focus should still be more on further lowering infections and increasing our protection against the coronavirus. Caroline Bongkin, CNN Philippines.
Beginning next month, the country will open its doors to all foreign tourists. The Tourism Department says the Interagency Task Force for Emerging Infectious Diseases has decided to lift the arrival quota for unvaccinated passengers in all ports of entry. They will need to present a negative RT-PCR test taken 48 hours before departure from point of origin or a negative antigen test taken 24 hours from departure. The resumption of visa issuances by Philippine embassies and consulates will also start on April 1st. The Education Department sets aside almost ₱1 billion to help schools holding in-person classes. In a virtual media briefing, Education Undersecretary Annalyn Sevilla says the agency has released a total of more than ₱977 million to public schools nationwide. As of March 10th, over 6,000 elementary and high schools have held in-person classes. Also, for the first time since 2020, DepEd is allowing schools in areas under alert levels 1 and 2 to hold in-person graduation or recognition rites. Still on the COVID-19 pandemic, the Food and Drug Administration has approved the emergency use authorization for Pfizer's oral antiviral drug Paxlovid. On the FDA website, Paxlovid is advised for adult patients with mild to moderate symptoms who are at risk for progression to severe COVID-19. When we come back, Russian troops resume their advance to Kiev with the 40-mile-long convoy spreading out near Ukraine's capital on day 16 of the war. And 59 days before the Filipino votes, tech giant Google launches a page featuring top election surges. Details next.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
watching Newsnight on CNN Philippines. No stopping for Russia 16 days into the deadly war with Ukraine. Moscow is asking the UN Security Council to hear out its claims that the United States is engaging, quote, military biological activities in the former Soviet nation. The U.S. dismisses that allegation as another false flag effort to escalate attacks. All these while Russian troops inch closer to the capital, Kiev. CNN's John Lorick reports.
Satellite images taken by Maxar Technologies Thursday show the 40-mile-long Russian military convoy largely dispersed, with some vehicles in forests and others seen in residential areas near Kyiv. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky remains resolute.
I am the president of an adequate country, an adequate nation, and the father of 2 children, and no chemical or any other weapons of mass destruction were developed on my land. The whole world knows that.
As Russian troops inch forward toward the capital of Kyiv amid heavy fighting, Ukrainian forces say they defeated a Russian tank regiment in Brovary Thursday, eliminating its commander.
We're doing everything to save our people in the cities that the enemy just wants to destroy.
President Joe Biden will announce Friday that the U.S., G7, and the EU will call to revoke Russia's most favored nation trade status, according to sources familiar with the issue.
I think the American people know how important this fight is. I think they know that as painful as the price is today, the costs are going to be higher if we do not act now to deal with this tyrant.
Although the U.S. supports Ukraine's efforts, the White House declined to specify any so-called red line Russia could cross that would lead to U.S. involvement on the ground.
It's important to realize that it's not in the United States' interest to get into a conflict with another nuclear superpower. That is and could be the beginning of World War III.
I'm John Lawrence reporting.
Ukraine says about 100,000 people have been rescued through evacuation corridors in the past 2 days. Two former COMELEC commissioners called on the poll body to quickly resolve all pending cases, including those against presidential candidate Bongbong Marcos. 6 cases against Marcos are either on appeal or up for decision before the COMELEC.
More than 30 days just to release a decision, that's mediocre. Cases na, dispose na nila yan. Masyado nang maraming kumita dyan.
Tingin ko ang priority dyan, ang daming mga pending cases, especially those that are necessary, or those that need to be resolved prior to election. They must free themselves from any political connections or partisan connections and be independent in the exercise of their function.
Meanwhile, the former commissioners believe newly appointed COMELEC Chairman Saidamen Pangarungan, as well as Commissioners George Garcia and Amy Neri, are qualified for their posts. Former Commissioner Louis Guia says if there are doubts about the credibility and independence of these officials, the public may ask them to inhibit from cases with perceived conflicts of interest. Commissioner Garcia had already inhibited from the election cases of his former clients, who include 4 presidential candidates. Now, on the campaign trail, Manila Mayor Isko Moreno visited Nueva Ecija, where he alluded to 2 of his rivals. He questioned the revelation that Bongbong Marcos decided to run for president while watching the Marvel movie Ant-Man, pointing out the story was about a thief. Moreno also took a swipe at the term "nasa laylayan ng lipunan," which was Vice President Leni Robredo's 2016 campaign slogan. For Moreno, the slogan seems to look down on the poor. Marcos and Robredo have yet to respond to Moreno's statements. Senator Ping Lacson lashing out at the Robredo camp for allegedly peddling disinformation about him, as he insists he did not red tag supporters who attended her campaign rally in Cavite last week. In Zambales, Lacson said her camp should not spread fake news if it also decries being a victim of disinformation. Robredo's spokesperson Barry Gutierrez had said red tagging masked as concern is a, quote, new low. In response to Lacson's statement that he is concerned about a supposed alliance between Robredo's side and communist groups. Thousands of supporters welcomed Robredo and her running mate, Kiko Pangilinan, in the province of Negros Occidental. Robredo dropped by the Community Learning Hub in Himamaylan, which is part of her office's pandemic response that provides gadgets and internet access to students. Robredo won by around 600,000 votes against Marcos in Negros Occidental, during the 2016 VP race. Marcos and his running mate, Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte, campaigned in the province of Laguna again. Laguna Governor and supporter Ramil Hernandez accompanied the tandem and their senatorial bets. Marcos won more votes against Robredo in Laguna during the 2016 VP race. Duterte told her supporters in Laguna it was under her administration that Davao City became the fourth most competitive and the eighth richest city. She adds she cleared the city government's debt of over ₱1 billion that she inherited when she assumed office. Her predecessor, none other than her father, President Rodrigo Duterte. Senator Manny Pacquiao slams the Finance Department's move to remove perks of business process outsourcing companies that continue to allow work-from-home arrangements. Pacquiao says the work-from-home setup can help ease traffic congestion, save on fuel, and stabilize fuel prices. And Labor leader Leody de Guzman and running mate Walden Bello begin their campaign in Mindanao. Get to know some first-time senatorial candidates as we bring you the CNN Philippine Senatorial Forum. On our 8th forum, former Ifugao Representative Teddy Bagilat, former Eastern Samar Governor Lutgardo Barbo, and labor lawyer Luke Espiritu will address pressing problems and issues facing the nation. Will they make it to your list? That's happening this Sunday, March 13 at 7 in the evening with our senior anchor Rico Hizon only here on CNN Philippines. Tech giant Google launches a search trends page for topics and searches related to the Philippine elections. The new platform shows how much a presidential or vice presidential candidate is being searched, as well as the regions where the interest is coming from. As of this Friday, presidential candidate Leni Robredo and vice presidential bet Sara Duterte are the most searched in the past week. Google News Initiative says the new tool helps put political trends in perspective, but the company reiterates it is not a substitute for polling data. Straight ahead, things are looking up for Filipino pole vaulter EJ Obiena, who has joined the lineup of the Philippine Olympic Committee for the Southeast Asian Games. And exciting things also await Nintendo fans with his new theme park arriving at the Universal Studios Hollywood soon. Stay tuned.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
Welcome back. Mega star Sharon Cunette has made it clear she is not pleased with Salvador Panelo's use of her hit song during his senatorial campaign. The former chief presidential legal counsel sang Sana'y Wala ng Wakas during Sara Duterte's event yesterday. Cuneta lashed back online saying Panelo was not allowed to use the song. In a statement, the senatorial bet said he used the track to honor his late son with Down syndrome, adding that Viva Records gave him permission to use. In sports, Olympic pole vaulter EJ Obiena has been formally included in the Philippine Olympic Committee's roster for the Southeast Asian Games in May, but Obiena's place in the Vietnam event is still up in the air since PATAFA said its endorsement will depend on the result of their mediation process. The POC president said on Wednesday the World Athletics body has not confirmed if the committee's endorsement alone guarantees Obiena's participation. And volleyball fans can soon get tickets for the Week 2 of the FIVB Volleyball Nations League's matches right here at home. Passes go on sale April 18th. The tournaments will take place at the Smart Araneta Coliseum in Quezon City on June 14th to the 19th and June 21st to the 26th. After over 4 decades of cheering kids up on Sesame Street, Emilio Delgado, who played Fix-It shop owner Luis, died yesterday. He was 81 years old. Delgado held the record for longest-running role for a Mexican-American in a U.S. TV series. Now, for those planning to take a trip to Universal Studios Hollywood, get ready for a new section that looks like a video game come to life. The amusement park announced it will open Super Nintendo World by 2023. Based on its first installment, which is in Universal Studios Japan, we can expect rides and other attractions inspired by Mario Kart. And that is it for now. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pio Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
This program is brought to you by